The silence of the empty house echoed like a constant reminder of my loneliness. 42 years, 3 architecture awards, and a perfectly organized routine. That was my life, until 3 weeks ago. My name is James Wilson, and I made the mistake I swore I'd never make. I confused admiration with desire. I'd always been a man of rules, clear limits, and well-defined lines, both in the projects I designed and in the life I built with Sarah. Our 5-year marriage worked like one of those carefully planned structures, each of us with our own space, mutual respect, and without big emotional ups and downs. Her son, Eric, was just a distant figure at the few family gatherings, a young man who accepted our union with polite indifference. If this video has sparked your curiosity about the boundaries that should never be crossed, leave a like now and subscribe to find out how far this story goes. My safe haven was always the office on the upper floor of our house in Boston. Big windows framed the backyard like living canvases. The wooden deck where I'd have coffee every morning as I watched the sunrise. The dark wood of the floor contrasted with the white walls. Minimalism that I had always appreciated. My routine was my safe port. I'd get up at 5:30 a.m., make a strong coffee, review projects until 7 a.m. A quick run around the neighborhood, a shower, and then I'd dive into work until dark. Video calls with clients filled the afternoons. At night, a glass of red wine, a documentary, or a book on the history of architecture. When Sarah left to take care of her sick mother in Arizona, that routine intensified. Work filled the empty spaces she left behind. The silence, once comfortably shared between us, now weighed over the big house. I started talking to myself just to hear a human voice echo through the walls. Loneliness has that effect. It makes us vulnerable in ways we never imagined. The phone call came on a rainy Tuesday. Sarah's voice sounded exhausted on the other end. "James, I need a favor. The storm destroyed part of the roof of Eric's apartment near the university. He doesn't have a place to stay for a few weeks." My stomach tightened. Sarah's son, who barely spoke more than polite phrases during Christmas dinners, would have to live at home. With me? Without her acting as a social buffer. "Of course," I replied automatically. "When is he arriving?" "Tonight. I'm sorry for the last-minute notice." 3 hours later, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Eric drenched from the rain, a backpack on his shoulders and 2 big suitcases. At 23, his look mixed discomfort and resignation as he stared at me. "Hi, James," he said, without calling me stepdad like he used to when he was younger. "Sorry for the inconvenience." "It's no trouble," I lied, as I stepped aside for him. "The house is too big for just one person." I realized it was the first time we were truly alone since I met Sarah. His dark brown hair was dripping water onto the entryway floor, and I noticed how much he had changed. He was no longer the reluctant teenager I once knew, but a grown man with broad shoulders and a presence that filled the space. The first few days were an awkward dance of 2 people trying not to invade each other's territory. Our interactions were limited to practical questions about using the dishwasher or how the heating system worked. On the 4th day, I found Eric frustrated while trying to fix his laptop, which was essential for his online classes. "Can I take a look?" I offered, stopping at the guest room door. He hesitated, then shrugged. "If you can get this dinosaur running." We spent 2 hours taking the device apart and reassembling it. We discovered a problem with the motherboard that I managed to fix using tools from my office. During the work, questions naturally arose about his studies in environmental engineering, his projects, his ideas for the future. "That's impressive," he commented when we finished, and the computer was working perfectly. "I always thought architects only drew pretty buildings." "And I thought environmental engineers just hugged trees," I shot back with a smile, the first genuine one we'd exchanged. The next morning, he showed up in my office with 2 cups of coffee. "I thought you might need these. I've been watching your projects from afar. That concept of a self-sustaining building is fascinating." Somehow, breakfast turned into a ritual. After that came the dinners we prepared together. I found out he had a cooking talent inherited from his grandmother. When the wooden deck needed repairs after a storm, we worked side by side for an entire weekend. It was during the deck repair that something changed. The late afternoon sun bathed the backyard, and Eric had taken off his shirt because of the heat. Sweat trickled down his back as he hammered, his muscles tensing with each movement. I caught myself watching him for too long, an uncomfortable heat rising in my neck. That night, I couldn't sleep. The image of him kept returning to my mind, triggering reactions that filled me with shame. He was my wife's son, not by blood, but still, there was a line that shouldn't be crossed. The next morning, Sarah called to say she'd be away for another 2 weeks. How are you two managing? Everything's under control, I replied, watching from the window as Eric ran in the backyard after his morning exercise. I began avoiding him, diving into work, inventing deadlines and meetings so I wouldn't be around at meals. He noticed, of course. Did I do something wrong? He asked one night, entering my office without knocking. Of course not, I answered, without taking my eyes off the computer screen. I'm just busy. Okay, he said, lingering in the doorway a few seconds longer than necessary. For a moment, I thought we were getting along. The conflict inside me grew with each passing day. During an inevitable dinner, Eric casually mentioned he had just ended a recent relationship. She didn't understand my connection with other men either, he said, as if commenting on the weather, gauging my reaction. I choked on my wine, the information echoing in my mind like an alarm. He smiled sideways, his eyes holding mine for 1 second too long for comfort. You look surprised, he observed. I just didn't expect this conversation, I managed to say. Later that night, we brushed past each other in the narrow corridor between the bathroom and the bedrooms. His body brushed against mine for a brief, electrifying moment. I mumbled a hasty apology and locked myself in my room, heart racing and thoughts in turmoil. The boundary between us was getting thinner, and I no longer knew on which side I wanted to be. The clock was nearing midnight when I finished an urgent project. My eyes burned after hours in front of the screen, and I decided I needed a moment to unwind. I quietly went down the stairs, careful not to wake Eric, who I assumed had been asleep for hours. The soft light coming from the kitchen caught me by surprise. There was Eric, sitting at the table with a half-empty bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses. His messy hair fell over his eyes, and he was wearing just a pair of gray sweatpants. I couldn't sleep, he said, looking up when he saw me. I figured you'd be up too. Want to join me? I hesitated for a moment, aware that every interaction between us seemed loaded with hidden meanings. The tension in the air was almost palpable, like the electricity before a storm. Just a glass, I replied, sitting down in front of him. I have a meeting early tomorrow. Eric silently poured the amber drink. Our fingers briefly touched when he handed me the glass, and neither of us pretended it was accidental. Why are you avoiding me, James? He asked directly, his eyes fixed on mine. The whiskey went down hot in my throat, giving me a courage I didn't know I needed. Because I'm having thoughts I shouldn't be having. The silence that followed was heavy. Eric spun the glass between his fingers, as if he had been waiting for my words all along. And what thoughts would those be? His voice came out lower, almost a whisper. You know exactly what they are. I took another sip, allowing the alcohol to dull my caution. And this can't happen. I'm married to your mother. Eric leaned forward, closing the distance between us. She's never really here. Not physically, not emotionally. You know that as well as I do. That doesn't change what's right or wrong, I argued, though my voice betrayed my wavering conviction. So what is right then? Should we just deny what's happening between us? He reached his hand over the table, his fingers hovering just millimeters from mine. I've felt this since I arrived. You feel it too. The tension between us grew, with every unspoken word, every lingering glance. The air felt thick, heavy with dangerous possibilities. Let's just talk, I suggested, standing up and moving to the living room, looking for a less intimate setting. Let's clear the air. Eric followed me, taking the bottle and glasses along. We sat on the sofa, keeping a safe distance, yet close enough to feel each other's warmth. We talked about everything and nothing. His dreams after graduation, my old projects, childhood memories, our favorite movies. With every minute that passed, the distance between us shrank imperceptibly. When the subject turned to relationships, Eric gave a slight smile. My mom always chose men who looked like you. Intelligent, reserved, intense. I guess I got that from her. What do you mean? I asked, even though I already knew where this conversation was heading. I've always been drawn to older men who know what they want. Men like you, James. He said my name in a different tone, as if testing its taste on his tongue. His hand settled on my knee, and I felt his touch burning through the fabric of my sweatpants. Eric, I began, at a loss for how to finish the sentence. Don't say anything, he murmured, moving closer. Just feel. The first touch of his fingertips on my face was like an electric current. I closed my eyes, torn between the desire to pull away and the desperate need to get closer. His warm breath on my cheek broke down my last defenses. This is crazy, I whispered, even though my hands were already on the back of his neck, pulling him closer. The best kind of crazy, he replied, erasing the final space between us. His lips met mine with a restrained urgency, as if he had imagined this moment countless times. I tried to remember the reasons to stop, but every rational thought melted away under the heat of his hands, exploring my chest, sliding down my back. The sofa became our refuge, a neutral territory where the rules of the outside world didn't apply. We shed our clothes one by one, each new glimpse of skin accompanied by hesitant touches that quickly became bold. "Are you sure?" I asked one last time, when we were about to cross the point of no return. His eyes shone in the dim light of the room, illuminated only by the distant glow from the kitchen. "I've never been so sure of anything in my life." Our bodies came together like two pieces of a perfect puzzle. The contrast between his vibrant youth and my controlled experience created a harmony I had never felt before. His movements were both impulsive and precise, as I tried to memorize every detail, every sigh, every moment of shared pleasure. It felt like we were two navigators exploring an unknown ocean, mapping uncharted territories with our hands and lips, finding points of pleasure that made the other arch their back and hold their breath. Time lost all meaning. It might have been minutes or hours as we lost ourselves in each other. When we finally reached the climax, it was like a crashing wave that swept us away from the shore of sanity. For those brief moments, I forgot who we were, what boundaries we had crossed, or the consequences that awaited us. There was only the pure connection between two beings, stripped of labels and judgment. Later, lying side by side, sweaty and panting, reality slowly began to creep back in. The ceiling above us seemed to watch our forbidden act in silent testimony. The house, which had witnessed so many moments of my marriage with Sarah, now also held this secret. Eric turned to me, his face lit by a satisfaction that filled me with both pleasure and guilt. His fingers traced lazy patterns on my chest, as if trying to memorize my shape. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, his voice still husky. "About how this changes everything," I replied honestly. He smiled, gently kissing my shoulder. "Some things need to change." We lay there in silence, the weight of it all gradually settling around us. Eventually, we got up, gathered our scattered clothes, and went back upstairs together. We paused in the hallway between our separate rooms, the uncertainty hanging in the air like an unspoken question. Eric decided for both of us, taking my hand and guiding me to his room. That night, we slept intertwined, as if we feared that once we separated, reality would come crashing in with all its force. I woke up before dawn, with Eric's arm heavy over my chest, and even more weight on my mind. The first rays of sunlight began to peek through the gaps in the blinds, illuminating his sleeping face. He looked so peaceful, so far removed from the inner turmoil I was feeling. Carefully, I slipped out of bed, grabbed my clothes, and went back to my room. In the shower, I let the hot water fall on me as if it could wash away the guilt along with the physical traces of the previous night. The images of what we had done flashed vividly in my mind, not with disgust, which might have been easier to bear, but with a renewed desire that scared me even more. When I went down to the kitchen, Eric was already there, making coffee. He was wearing only pajama pants and smiled when he saw me, as if we were just a normal couple starting an ordinary day. "Good morning," he said, handing me a steaming cup. "Did you sleep well?" His casualness threw me off. "Eric, about last night." "No," he interrupted, placing a finger over my lips. "Don't say it was a mistake. Don't ruin what happened." I sighed, accepting the cup. "We need to talk about it." We sat at the kitchen table, the morning sun creating a surreal domestic atmosphere for a conversation that was anything but simple. "What happened between us?" I started, carefully choosing my words. "It was intense and meaningful. I'm not going to pretend it wasn't, but you're my wife's son." "Stepson," he corrected. "I didn't even grow up seeing you as a father figure. We met when I was almost an adult. That doesn't change the fact that I betrayed your mother, with you." Eric lowered his eyes to his cup. "Your mother hasn't really been present in this marriage for a long time. You know that. I see how she treats you, how she puts everything else above your relationship." His words hit a painful truth I had been ignoring. Sarah and I had become more like housemates than partners. Our marriage had long existed just on paper and in the appearance we maintained for the outside world. "Even so," I pressed, "there are boundaries that should not be crossed. And yet we crossed them." Eric looked up, his eyes challenging and vulnerable at the same time. "And honestly, James, I don't regret it. For the first time in years I felt a real connection with someone, and I know you felt it too." I couldn't deny it. What we experienced went beyond the physical. There was a mutual understanding, a harmony I rarely found in life. "So what now?" I asked, more to myself than to him. That depends on us, Eric replied, extending his hand across the table to touch mine. We can pretend it was just a moment of weakness, or we can acknowledge that there's something here worth exploring. And your mother? Our marriage? A dark look crossed his face. You haven't had a real marriage for years, James. You're just sharing a house and keeping up appearances. You deserve more than that. You deserve someone who's really present, who cares about your dreams, who wants to build a life with you. The truth in his words hit me like a wave. How long had I settled for an empty relationship, justifying the emotional distance as respect for each other's space? This is way too complicated, I said, running my hand through my hair. What happened between us? Can't go on. A lot of people would get hurt. Eric stood up, walked around the table, and knelt beside me. His hands held my face, forcing me to look into his eyes. If you really believe that, I'll respect it. But don't lie to yourself, James. What do you feel when we're together? What did you feel last night? Was it just lust or something more? I couldn't answer right away. Emotions swirled inside me. Desire, guilt, fear, but also a newfound sense of being truly alive for the first time in years. It's more, I finally admitted. And that scares me. He smiled sadly and understandingly. Me too. But some things are worth the fear. At that moment, the sound of a car parking broke our bubble. I glanced out the window and felt my blood run cold. The yellow taxi parked in front of the house, suitcases being unloaded from the trunk, a familiar figure walking toward the door. It's your mom, I said, my voice nearly disappearing. She's back. Eric quickly moved away, reality hitting us hard. We exchanged glances, both understanding what was about to happen hanging between us like a heavy cloud. I'm not ready for this to end, he whispered, as we heard the key turning in the lock. I wasn't ready either, I realized with a sudden clarity. Whatever path lay ahead, I knew I couldn't go back to the life I had before, a life of shared loneliness and shallow connections. What I experienced with Eric had awakened something in me that refused to go back to sleep. The front door opened, and the sound of Sarah's voice calling our names echoed through the house. Let's talk later, I promised softly, before we separated, once again taking on the roles of stepfather and stepson, while inside, we were so much more. James! Eric! I'm home! Sarah's voice rang down the hall, breaking the tension between us like a hammer on glass. We separated instantly. Eric moved toward the stove while I got up to greet my wife. My heart was racing, torn between guilt and frustration at the interruption. Sarah entered the kitchen with a tired smile, dropping her suitcases on the floor. 5 weeks away had left its marks on her face, dark circles and new lines around her eyes. She hugged Eric first, kissing him on the cheek. What a wonderful surprise to find you both together so early, she commented, then turned to me. Her hug was brief and almost formal, followed by a quick kiss on the lips that made me stiffen involuntarily. How did you manage without me? We survived, Eric replied, avoiding my gaze. James taught me some cooking tricks. James cooking. That's new. Sarah laughed, sitting down at the table where, just moments before, Eric and I had been discussing our forbidden feelings. Mom's finally stable. The doctors say she might come home next week, with some home care. The normalcy of the conversation was surreal. Sarah spoke about her mother, the hospital, and the return trip, completely unaware of the emotional earthquake that had shaken our home during her absence. I'm going upstairs to unpack, she announced after a few minutes. Eric, sweetheart, are you going to stay with us longer? Your apartment is almost ready? Not yet, he answered, briefly glancing in my direction. The landlord said it'll take a few more weeks to finish the repairs. That's great. I mean, not because of the damage, but because it gives us more time together. It's been so long since we really spent time as a family. Sarah smiled, picking up her suitcases. James, can you help me with this? I followed my wife upstairs, carrying the heaviest luggage, aware of Eric's burning gaze on my back. In the bedroom, Sarah began unpacking, talking about plans for the next few days as if nothing had changed. I thought we could take the opportunity to have a family dinner tonight. What do you think? She asked, hanging clothes in the closet. Sure, I replied automatically, my mind still in the kitchen with Eric. Sarah stopped and looked at me more intently. Are you okay, James? You seem distant. I swallowed hard, avoiding her scrutinizing look. Just tired. I had a major project to deliver yesterday. She nodded, accepting my explanation without questioning, as she always did. I'm going to take a shower. Why don't you get some rest? You really look exhausted. When Sarah closed the bathroom door, I slipped away to the office. I needed space to think, to process the whirlwind of emotions consuming me. I sat at my drawing table, but I couldn't concentrate on anything except last night. The touch of Eric, the connection I found when I least expected it. A soft knock on the door startled me. Eric entered without waiting for an answer, closing the door quietly behind him. "We need to talk," he said, keeping his distance. "Not now," I replied, gesturing toward the ceiling with my eyes, reminding him of Sarah's presence upstairs. "Then when?" His voice carried a calm urgency. "She just got back. We won't have many chances." I ran my hands over my face, feeling the weight of the decision I had to make. "Eric, what happened between us? It was real," he finished. "Don't try to downplay it." "I'm not downplaying it. I'm trying to be realistic. Your mom is my wife. You're asking me to choose between you and your mom." I didn't phrase it as a question, but as a painful observation. "I'm asking you to choose happiness, James." He knelt beside me, his hands on the arms of my chair. "When was the last time you felt truly alive in this marriage?" I couldn't answer. The truth was, my marriage with Sarah had become a comfortable arrangement, a partnership based more on habits and convenience than on passion or genuine connection. "I need time," I finally said. "This isn't a decision I can make suddenly." Eric nodded, standing up. "I'll respect that, but I won't pretend that what happened meant nothing." "I can't do that either," I admitted. Before we could say more, we heard Sarah's footsteps in the hallway. Eric quickly moved away, casually positioning himself near the bookshelf as the door opened. "Oh, you're here," Sarah said with a smile, looking from one to the other. "I'm thinking about making something special for dinner. Any suggestions?" "Anything's fine with me," Eric replied as he headed for the door. "I'm going out for a run." The following days were an exercise in balancing on shaky ground. Sarah resumed her routine as if she'd never been gone. Work meetings, dinners with friends, quiet nights reading in bed while I pretended to work. Eric and I kept a respectful distance in her presence, but every shared glance, every accidental touch carried the weight of our secret. One afternoon, when Sarah went to visit a friend, I found Eric on the backyard deck, staring out at the garden. I sat next to him in silence, watching the sun begin to set behind the trees. "I'm moving out," he announced, not looking at me. "I found a classmate who's looking for a roommate." I felt a tightness in my chest. Because of me? Because of all of us? Finally, he turned to face me. "It's the right thing to do. I can't stay here, longing for you while knowing you're divided. It isn't fair to anyone." "When?" was all I could ask. "This weekend." I already talked to my mom. She was disappointed, but understood. I slowly nodded, recognizing the wisdom in his decision, even though it was tearing me apart inside. "That doesn't change what I feel," he said, his voice low but firm. "And I don't think it changes what you feel either." "It doesn't change," I agreed. "But maybe it's best for now." Eric briefly covered my hand with his. "For now," he repeated, a whole world of meaning in those two words. On Saturday morning, I helped Eric load his things into the car. Sarah was there, hugging him and making him promise to come have dinner with us regularly. When it was time for me to say goodbye, we exchanged a formal hug with words caught in our throats. "Take care," was all I managed to say. "You too," he replied, his eyes saying what neither of us could voice. As his car drove away, it felt like a part of me was leaving with it. Sarah interlaced her arm with mine, resting her head on my shoulder. "It's good to see you two getting close," she commented, completely oblivious to the true depth of that closeness. "I always wanted you to have a better relationship." The irony in her words nearly made me laugh bitterly. "Let's go inside," I said, leading her back to the house that would never be the same again. 3 weeks had passed since Eric left. The house returned to its previous routine. Sarah busy with work, me buried in projects, our lives running on parallel lines that rarely intersected. But something had fundamentally changed inside me. The experience with Eric had awakened feelings and desires I didn't even know existed, exposing the fragility of what I called my marriage. On a typical Tuesday, I received a message on my phone. "Coffee tomorrow? I need to show you my new sustainable engineering project." It was Eric, offering an innocent excuse for us to meet. I glanced at Sarah, absorbed in her laptop on the other side of the room, completely disconnected from my emotional world. I thought about how easy it would be to continue like this for years, maybe decades, living together yet apart, playing the expected roles but never truly being present for each other. "I need to tell you something," I said, breaking the silence of the room. Sarah looked up, surprised by my serious tone. "What's wrong?" I sat beside her, searching for the right words. "How long has it been since we really talked?" Not about work or bills or social obligations, but about us, about what we feel, about what we want from life. She blinked, puzzled by the sudden change. "What are you talking about, James?" "I'm talking about our marriage," I replied calmly. "About the fact that we've been living like polite strangers for years." Sarah closed her laptop slowly. "Is this about my trip?" "I know I was away longer than planned, but my mom needed me." "It isn't about the trip. It's about everything. When was the last time we felt truly connected? When did we last share something more than just the practical details of our day?" I saw understanding start to appear in her eyes, quickly followed by a touch of defensiveness. "All marriages go through phases, James. We've had our distant moments, and our close moments." "And when was our last close moment?" I asked gently. "Can you remember?" She didn't answer right away, her eyes drifting toward the window. "What exactly are you trying to say?" I took a deep breath. "I think we need to be honest about where we are, about what we really want. Are you happy, Sarah? Truly happy with what we have?" A tear rolled down her cheek, but there was more resignation than surprise in her expression. "I've been wondering the same thing for a long time," she finally admitted. "I just didn't know how to bring it up." That night was the first time in years that we really talked, about our abandoned dreams, about how we'd settled into a comfortable but empty existence, about the possibility of going our separate ways. I didn't mention Eric. It wasn't the time. This conversation was about us, about facing a truth we had both avoided for so long. The next morning, I replied to Eric's message. "Tomorrow at 10, at the downtown cafe." When we met, he immediately noticed something had changed. Maybe it was the way I sat more upright, as if a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. "What happened?" he asked after we ordered our coffees. "I talked with Sarah," I said simply. "About our marriage. About how we haven't really been present for each other for such a long time." Eric's eyes widened. "You told her about—" "No," I interrupted. "That conversation wasn't about you or us. It was about being honest with ourselves about what we want in life." "And what do you want, James?" His voice was almost a whisper. I looked at him, really looked at him, taking in every detail of his face, every emotion in his eyes. "I want to feel alive again. I want genuine connection. I want the chance to discover what we could be without secrets or guilt." A slow smile spread across Eric's face. "That sounds like a good start. It's the only thing I can offer right now, a beginning," I explained. "I need to sort things out with Sarah properly. I owe that to her, to myself, and to us, if we decide there's an us." Eric extended his hand over the table, his fingers lightly brushing mine. "A beginning is all we need." In that moment, I realized I was standing on the edge of something both scary and wonderful. A future that was uncertain, but filled with real possibilities for connection and discovery. The boundary I had crossed with Eric wasn't just physical. It was emotional. A passage to a truer, braver version of myself. I don't know what the future holds for us. The road ahead will be complex, filled with tough conversations, possible judgment, and painful adjustments. But for the first time in years, I feel fully present, completely alive, and honest with myself about what I truly desire. If you've ever found yourself stuck in a life that seems perfect on the outside but empty on the inside, if you've ever felt like you're just existing instead of really living, then maybe my story will resonate with you. Sometimes, the limits we most need to cross are the ones we build within ourselves, the barriers between who we are and who we could be. This is the story of how I found the courage to follow my heart, even when the path seemed impossible. It's a story about difficult choices, unexpected connections, and the search for authenticity in a world that often encourages us to settle. If my journey touched something in you, leave a like and subscribe for more stories about the complexities of the human heart and the choices that define who we really are. Because in the end, it's our toughest decisions that reveal our true nature. And sometimes, it's only by crossing a thin line that we discover who we were meant to be.